How can I train skills for gravel racing? Furthermore, how can I improve my efficiency on loose, chunky gravel roads with undulating hills, particularly with cornering and descending? Okay, so gravel handling. I hear this sometimes. Like, in fact, I even saw something the other day that was like, it was an Instagram ad, and it was like, gravel handling clinic. It's not just mountain biking. And I want to be like, yo, like, get out of here with that. Because like, it's the same principles. It's not like it's an entirely different world. You just have to look at what you're constrained by. Your bike doesn't have suspension. It doesn't have high volume tires. It doesn't have the geometry that's going to be able to allow you to, I guess, have a bigger margin of error. In other words, same principles. You just have to walk a finer line. That's the only thing, which is why I do not understand for the life of me, while people are like, I'm a road rider and I'm afraid of riding dirt, so I'm going to ride gravel. Just get a mountain bike. It'll make you way more comfortable. And I don't know. Anyways, gravel is crazy to me. So, but with that, the main things that you have to look at with gravel is the fact that you have limited traction and your bike is a bad handling bike compared to what it could be like a mountain bike. Those are the two things, but the principles are the same. And the principles, if you want to go into that, go look at how to be a better mountain biker. We have a video on YouTube with Lee McCormick. He is the shred shaman, the spiritual enduro bro that can guide you through anything. And he is incredible. And I'm sure he's listening and or watching to this right now. So thank you, Lee, for all you do. He goes through positioning and theory and a whole lot of things that might unlock a lot of riding for you and make connect feeling to actual things that you see on the trail. He's just incredible with it. But I think one of the main things that I see scaring people on gravel bikes, because once again, your bike doesn't handle well and you're limited by traction, two bad things, it causes you to skid. And skidding is usually on a road bike. That means that you are going down. Like, it is so rare when you skid on a road bike and you aren't on the ground right after that, right? That's a very rare occurrence. So loss of traction is terrifying to most people that are going to gravel because they have this kind of like what you mentioned, Amber, like this kind of like this response that you've built up to that over time, where that is a clear signal that danger is imminent and it's about to hurt really badly. So you have that built in, and then you get on a gravel bike, it loses traction everywhere. It can't hold traction. So suddenly you feel like you're dying every 10 feet on the trail. It's not a good thing. So you have to get to the point where basically you have to familiarize yourself with that. And you do that, just like Amber said, in working your way up in increments. But loss of traction is going to happen on gravel. It's just going to happen, but it also doesn't mean the end of the day. It just is part of it. In fact, if you can get to the point where you actually get comfortable with it, like Pete, Alex, myself, we use that. That's a tool in our toolbox. And it's really comforting actually, because I'm always a little nervous when I have traction. I know this sounds weird, but when I'm on a gravel bike and I'm on like a fire road descent, I'm more nervous when I do have traction and I'm less nervous when I don't, because once the slide is started, I know what's going to happen and I know how things are going on and I know that it is sliding. But if I'm braking and it's not sliding, then I'm like, when is this tipping point going to come in? When is it going to happen? And is it going to happen in the wrong way? So it's kind of like a rally car driver. They would much rather drift their way through a turn because they can control that. Whereas if they're trying to hold traction, they can't really control that. There are too many factors that influence that. So, there's part of it. Number one, when you're talking about gravel bikes, it's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, AKA skidding. That's one thing that you'll have to do for sure. Sorry, I probably went too long on that, but Alex, what would you add to this?
I'm just going to go back to riding the bike that you want to be fast on. So there's different advantages, like you said, coming from different disciplines. Coming from a road discipline, you're already used to the handlebars, that position, narrower Q factor, any of the things that change fit-wise. So there's an advantage there to being comfortable in that position. Every time I get on my gravel bike from the mountain bike, it definitely feels different. So just being able to ride is like one less barrier to when you get to the trails. You already feel comfortable on it. You're not like fighting the bike as well. And then it is just time. And we talked about working on skills in mountain biking the last time I was on the podcast, but just focusing on one thing at a time can be super helpful. Breaking it down like, okay, this time I'm really going to focus on loose corners. And, like you said, maybe go through that corner with your finger on the rear brake and just trying to break traction, just waiting for that rear tire to skid out a little bit. Okay. Good. And then let go as soon as it breaks traction and then hit it. And funny enough, this is actually a technique that I've seen riders use on mountain bike courses. They'll come around a corner and they'll feather their brake to see how much traction they really have in that corner until they break traction. And then once they break traction, it's like, okay, there's the line. So for race day, they know exactly where it is. So a mix of that and just mastering the skills you need to be good at gravel, right? It, like, if you have a fire road, you know, you could even do your intervals up and down that fire road just to be riding on the terrain and getting used to how those tires react. But you can also geek out on the tires, right? Like mess around with some tire pressure because you don't have suspension, you know, mess around with tread, get a bigger tread tire if you don't feel like you have enough tread. And it's just time on that bike will go a long way.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to mention one thing. It's everything you're trying to do is to make so you're able to predict what your bike and you are able to do. And as someone who came later to mountain biking, if I'm able to predict what any off-road bicycle is going to do, I'm able to maximize on my time and cornering and speed and everything. So it's when you can't predict and you're not sure what your bike or your tires are going to do, that's when you start slowing down. And in a race, that's the last thing you want. So the more time and the more effort and the more familiar you are with what your bike is going to do, the faster you're going to be able to race it. Just like the rally car drivers, they're able to predict what their car is going to do, and that's how they're fast. They're not fast because they're just innately good at this thing. No, there's a predictability, and they're maximizing on what they're able to predict.
Mm-hmm. Right. Everything that they're doing, even though it may seem like it's just on the edge of control, is 100% in their control because they know exactly how the machine is going to respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great points. Amber, how about you?
I would just say, make sure that you schedule and set aside time to work exclusively on skills. Because I think that a common misconception is if I just go ride my bike, I'm going to learn how to do the things. And that's true to an extent. Every time you ride your bike, you're going to learn how to do it better. That's a fact. But you can really accelerate the learning process if you actually take at least one day a week. If this is your focus, I would say take a day a week where you're not doing intervals, you're not trying to get a certain amount of time on the bike, but you're setting aside maybe an hour or two where you're literally only going to work on skills. So you're super mentally fresh, you can be really focused. And this would look like doing really simple drills or going out and finding a section of trail or dirt road where you can session particular types of terrain and then practice certain skills. And you want to make sure that you're doing this, very, very progressively. So a couple drills, as an example, would be ratcheting, because especially if you're a roadie going to dirt, and I'm speaking from experience, it can be easy to forget that you can actually continue to create forward momentum without doing a full pedal stroke revolution. And that's a really handy thing when you're on a trail where there might be some rocks or logs that you could potentially catch a pedal on if you were trying to do a complete pedal stroke. Doing things like practicing front end lifts or back end lifts and even turning that into a bunny hop. And so a way of progressing that, for example, would be to get a towel and roll it up on the ground and try lifting your front end over that, and then once you get comfortable with that or bunny hopping that, then you can remove the towel and then do a small stick and then a bigger stick, or go from a rope to a small curb to a bigger curb. So making sure that you're building your confidence and you're doing so progressively. And another thing that you can try, especially for gravel, that I found helps a lot from the road to dirt, is reminding yourself of how very far forward on the bike you can go and how very far back on the bike you can go. You can shift your weight super far forward and super far back. And when you're on dirt, the terrain and there's a lot more variability in traction, but there's a lot more variability in gradient too. And so moving yourself forward on the bike if you're on a really steep uphill, or move yourself back on the bike if you're on a really steep downhill, it's surprising as a roadie to realize how far back over your rear wheel you can be and still be really stable. So practicing that in a safe environment, like practicing moving really far forward, really far back on maybe just like a grassy field, and then taking that to a section of uphill or downhill that you can just session over and over and feel how your bike responds when you're moving your weight forward, when you're going uphill, or moving it back when you're going downhill. And those are really basic things, but if you take the time to do that when you're mentally fresh and you can really absorb those lessons, then when you go out and do your 3-hour ride or your 2-hour ride, those are going to come much more naturally to you, and you can integrate them in a really, really constructive manner. So again, you want to do that progressively. Maybe start on a fire road that's pretty tame, then go to a solidly constructed trail, and then maybe try some class 4 dirt roads up in Vermont, which can get pretty gnarly. But again, you want to make it progressive. So you're really getting the hang of it, building your confidence, and then challenging yourself at an appropriate rate.
Find a skills clinic. Yeti, Betty, Sarah Raleigh, and a bunch of gals. They're awesome that put together these clinics that travel around and do that sort of a thing. It's awesome. Lee is always doing clinics. Do that. It helps a lot. So
if you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up.
If you didn't like this video, you can give it a thumbs down, but let us know what you would have done differently in the comments below.
If you want to see more of these videos, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, check out TrainerRoad.com.
Do it.
If you think I have better hair than Jonathan, give it a thumbs up. If not, leave a comment.
My hair is better than his.